start from the beginning. Tell me, what is Who Cares About Kelsey about? Why don't you tell us what it is?
Sure. Well, actually, I can tell you about Who Cares About Kelsey by going back a little further to including Samuel, because they really are tied together. Including Samuel, as some of your viewers and listeners may know, and some may not, is a documentary about my own son Samuel. And I could talk the whole time just about that film, but really the crux of it is that it was a film that I did just kind of like passion to hopefully change the world, make it a better place for Samuel and other kids with disabilities. And it got way bigger than I ever thought it would. It's been translated into 17 languages. It's been all
Wow.
over the world as a tool for inclusive education. So it's really exciting. And I've had the chance to go and show it literally 400 or 500 times around the country, to most states around the country. And almost everywhere I went, people kept asking this question of, what about kids with more hidden disabilities, emotional behavioral disabilities? And those can include such a wide array of disabilities, from depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress from maybe abuse or something, ADHD, bipolar, schizophrenia, fetal alcohol. I mean, there's so many, eating disorders, so many of these disabilities that people forget are all part of this grouping of emotional behavioral disabilities. And when I started researching the topic, I found that kids with these disabilities have like the worst outcomes of all kids with disabilities. They end up, they're segregated in school about 65% of the time. Kids are not included if they have these disabilities nationally. They have only about a 40 to 50% graduation rate from high school, whereas the rest of the country has about a 75% rate, the rest of the kids in the country. And then they are twice as likely as any other kid with a disability to be incarcerated, on the street, addicted to drugs, teen parent, coming out of school, whether they drop out or graduate. So those are awful outcomes, and I thought, how can I do a film that shows what it would look like to effectively support and include kids with these type of disabilities? And so that's really where I started doing the research that led to Somersworth High School, the site of the film, and Kelsey herself, that I ended up documenting for 2 years.
How was it for Kelsey when she had issues, whatever issues that
Mhm.
she had that you were documenting, and how was it for her to be feeling these things and then to have you following along? I mean, did you go into the school? Did you just talk to her at home?
Mhm.
How did that actually go down while it was happening?
Right. Well, one of the reasons I chose Kelsey as a subject was, after interviewing dozens of teenagers at the school, was because she was so herself, no matter what. She was going to be herself no matter what I did, no matter what I said. She's just her own person, and for better or for worse, she's going to be herself. And I think that's kind of a survival mechanism for her, because as people will see in the film, she's been through a lot. From a lot of drug abuse in her family, a very difficult divorce. She has severe ADHD, anxiety. She was self-mutilating. There was a lot going on in her life. So I feel like, apart, even my being in her life wasn't that big a factor compared to these other factors in her life.
But
Right.
can you talk a little bit about what the that program is that they're doing, the Renew program that they have at her school? Do you talk about
Sure.
that at home?
Yeah, sure. I mean, just what you were saying is true. I mean, any kid can have trouble fitting in high school or having trouble adjusting, but it can be scary if there are things that are really difficult happening in a kid's life that their family doesn't know about. And frankly, there are some families that aren't in a position to be very supportive. And I think Kelsey's family, for various reasons that people could see in the film, weren't all that connected to her life in some ways. So when Kelsey started doing this program, Renew, which is based at the Institute on Disability at UNH, where I work, and they work in schools all over New Hampshire and all over the country on this process where they identify kids with the schools, in collaboration with the school, who are at great risk of dropping out. And then they basically say, let's go through this kind of mapping process of your hopes and your dreams, all your obstacles, who are the people in your life you can really count on. The kids have a lot of say over who it is. They start saying, maybe I can graduate. And in Kelsey's case, they said, oh, you're volunteering at the fire department. You should be able to get credit for that. And they were able to work it out that she got credit for all the community service work she was doing. If you can really reach her at her level and say, okay, Kelsey, let's talk about what's going on here. Let's do it privately. Let's do it quietly. How can we help you here? She learned to eventually accept that help. It took
I
her.
think that, I guess you would say that that program had a positive effect on Kelsey. If they hadn't had that, you think that maybe her life would have turned out a little bit differently, that she wouldn't be in the
Oh
position
yeah.
right
I
now.
think she was a kid that was definitely on a path for drug addiction, juvenile justice system, teen pregnancy, like her siblings, both of her sisters became pregnant very young, keep them in school. And so instead of doing what Kelsey's doing now, which is going to college and, on track for a career, a lot of them are both, I mean, I'm sure many of them still have good lives, but they're certainly not on a path towards career or college or things that we might see as something that a lot of people would like to experience.
Yeah, so I think it's great. I
Right.
always love to see innovative things and people trying to make a difference. And
Yeah.
then when they find success, to try to spread it so that other people can learn from how they did it, so that the next people coming don't have to repeat the same mistakes that they may have done on the way
Right.
to
And
their success.
it's a really good point. I think there are a couple of common denominators in what you said. I mean, one thing is that when a school like Kelsey's, um, they make sure to implement things that are called evidence-based approaches.
Right.
So there's some approaches that people just think maybe work,
Yeah.
but if they don't have a body of evidence and research behind them, whether it's physical therapy or speech therapy or supporting kids with challenging behaviors, what's the point? Like it's not if there's and then if you don't use data to track with individual kids or individual schools if something's working or not,
Yes.
whether it's an intervention for an individual or at a school-wide level kind of an intervention, then how do you know if it's really working? So
What?
actually, one more thing I was going to say about that. What you were mentioning that some therapists might just have this generic approach that they apply to all kids, but the whole idea of person-centered planning, which is what was happening in Kelsey's case, is it's about the person first.
Right.
You start from that point. What is this person and their family's goals? And if you and your daughter have certain goals, they should respect that and say, okay, well, if that's your goals, here's how we can work towards them.
Is there anything else that you wanted to point out about the film that I haven't asked you?
Yeah, well, one thing that people may not be aware of that I actually did 9 mini films as part of this Who Cares About Kelsey project, and they've been really widely used as much as the main film. And actually, they're on our website. So if you go to whocaresaboutKelsey.com, you can learn all about the film and see the trailer and all that kind of thing. But if you go to multimedia, you can see our mini films, and the mini films. Some are not about Kelsey. 6 of them are actually interviews with incarcerated youth, young people who are in jail, talking about what led them down that path and what could have made a difference. And a lot of them are kids who had substance abuse issues or have difficult family situations or have different kinds of hidden disabilities. So they're really powerful interviews about what could make a difference in a kid's life if you reach them young.
Yeah.
And then one called Taja is a film on a girl with autism who's 8, and it shows how she's being incredibly well supported and included in another school in New Hampshire. And then there's a film called Education Revolution at Somersworth High School, and that's the school where Kelsey went to, and it shows how the whole school was transformed through positive behavioral supports, kind of on a school-wide basis. There's one film called Marcel that's only on the educational DVD that's not in there, and that looks at a kid out in St. Louis and looks at racial disparity issues around discipline. So we have all that material. A lot of it's for free, to just watch on the website. And then our education kit, which is for sale on the website, has 60 pages of educational material about all these evidence-based practices, framing all the issues that we're talking about in the project. So that's important that people know that. And we also have a really active Facebook group for Who Cares About Kelsey, and including Samuel. And we're going to be airing the film on public television next fall. And at that point, we're going to be facilitating screening parties all around the country, screenings and discussions about the film. We work with a lot of national groups like Boys and Girls Club, Girl Scouts, the NEA, the AFT, and they're going to be helping to create all these screenings all around the country, around the film, around the PBS broadcast, and the DVD.
That's really great. It's what I'm trying to do is to get a conversation going. Get people talking about it and thinking about it in a different way, and giving them not just the symptoms, because that's all we ever hear about when we think of any sort of mental illness. You think about some crazy schizophrenic bum who's on the corner here talking to himself. But it's so much more than that. And so instead of just talking about the symptoms and the bad things, let's also talk about what can we do to make a positive change and how a person can live with it and make positive contributions to their life and the people around them.
Yeah.
And I think that will cut out so much of the fear and the stigma. I mean, there's such a huge stigma, and not just mental illness, with any sort of disability.
Right. I agree 100%. And And I think that your goals are one and the same with mine. And but there are a lot of kids who are under the radar who we may not know are capable of doing some really difficult things, and or to themselves. I mean, and really the statistics say that people with mental illness are much more likely to be the victim of a crime than the perpetrator.
I think that's such an interesting fact because, like I said, anybody, the majority of people who think of somebody with a mental illness, that a fear comes over them, like, oh, they're going to hurt me, and more likely that person is going to be victimized.
Right. So this has to happen at an individual level for kids like Kelsey, and on a school-wide level. And what's exciting is that there really is a lot of awareness around this on a national level, and I'm really excited about the LIU post screening on the 28th, and hopefully some of your listeners can come and see that. But we also are doing screenings all over the country, and Kelsey travels and does these screenings with many of them with me. So people go to the website, they can see where all the upcoming screenings.
So that's good to know that they can just go to the website and check out when when you might be.
Yep. It just says see the film, and there's a whole list.